PK52, the Saturday morning meeting. Well, we're really into the new year now, and it's interesting to see the way the car business is going. Let's just have a review. I started selling Toyotas in the 1980s. A lot of you guys know that. Some of you weren't born yet. I get it. So 1985 Toyota pickup truck. Beast. Two-wheel drive. Once we moved into EFI, we could squeeze an amazing 116 horsepower out of this truck. This truck's 108 horsepower. So why would anybody back in the 80s buy a pickup truck with 108 horsepower? Well, interesting, the government has made changes through the automobile industry throughout my whole automotive career. So we started out in the 70s and, it was the race for the big block V8 horsepower. Kids were street racing. Most young men knew how to work on cars, and so they were always tinkering on their cars to get a little bit more horsepower, to work, buy another set of tires for the car. And then all of a sudden we started moving away from that, and gas prices started going up. The technology started changing, and we move into the 70s and the 80s, and they would take these big V8s and they smothered them with smog devices because we started talking about the environment and about air quality. And of course, cars back then were pretty toxic, and they ran leaded gas, and there was a lot of changes that needed to be made. They put in the catalytic converters, which basically, if you looked at the whole smog device of the vehicle, took that big, powerful, heart-throbbing V8 and really made it a pussycat. And so then there was cars that came out like the Mustang II. They had the AMC Gremlin, the AMC Pacer. And it's funny because people will buy a new car because it's new. I saw in my career, I saw people trading cars in that were superior to the cars that they were buying new. The cars were better performing, they were a better overall car, and the build quality of the new cars weren't as good as the car they were trading in. I saw that happen multiple times. Toyota and Mazda, Datsun, Nissan came into the business, front-wheel drive cars with phenomenal gas mileage. I mean, this vehicle right here with a manual transmission got over 20 miles per gallon, and that was pretty appetizing for somebody that didn't really need a full-size truck. Once we bounced this into a four-wheel drive, it was so lightweight and so capable that the people that bought Toyota trucks convinced other people to come look and buy a Toyota truck. And to be honest with you, it was very seldom a salesperson out in the public talking about the Toyota truck at the rodeo or the ag fair until they convinced some farmers and ranchers to buy a Toyota truck. It was their friend and their neighbor. So the product knowledge was being distributed because somebody bought a truck from a salesperson that actually explained why you should buy this product based upon what's going on. Let's go to today. There are a lot of people buying electric cars right now that don't really understand electric cars. But the media and the people, their next door neighbor bought an electric car, and it's crazy who the real influencers are in the car business. But what has to happen is there has to be somebody along the way that explains the technology to somebody so they can explain it to their neighbor, their friend, or their family member. And a lot of times they embellish and they say stuff that's not even true, but it does drive people to your brand, and it does drive people to buy a completely different car. I mean, ask somebody now if something happened to their all-electric vehicle, how they would personally work on the car. They would look at you and go, I don't even know how this thing works. And so that's kind of the way when Toyota came in with the Prius. I mean, people were frightened of this car. They were frightened of this car. Well, what if I get in an accident? Is it going to electrocute me? And then the firefighters and the EMS drivers had to take all this kind of training to make sure when they cut into the car, they didn't cut into the electronics and the electricity of the car, with a death blow. And, people will say, well, it's nothing more than a golf cart. And it was interesting because people had never driven one. Once they drove one and they realized, I mean, this is a real car. This thing 0 to 60, just like a regular car, it's a real car. And it's got over 300 miles, of range. Electric car. This car had unlimited range because it was a hybrid electric car, but people called it a golf cart. And then all of a sudden, other manufacturers started making hybrid technology, and somebody bought a car and told their neighbor, man, I'm getting 50 miles per gallon. This thing's amazing. I don't have to go to the gas station, but, every 3 weeks. Gas prices went to $4 to $5 a gallon. And so neighbor to neighbor to neighbor, to groups, to friends, relatives, all of a sudden, people started buying hybrid cars. And here we go in that EV hybrid technology. But people will buy a new car because they want a new car. So here comes the gist of my message today. We have got to get back to product knowledge. You don't have to be an engineer. If you own a car or you're selling a car, you do not have to be an engineer. But every single manufacturer has a series of training videos, seminars, online e-modules that you can take, because every time they change a vehicle and they change the technology, the manufacturer will drop the technology ideology to the dealerships. And what happens is the salespeople and the management of the dealership don't take the test, don't take the e-modules, but the influencers, the people that make their money on online blogs, Motor Trend, Car and Driver, Road and Track, all these places out there grab this information released from the manufacturer, and they print it in magazines, or they put it on an online Google search or on a blog. So I'm challenging every salesperson this year. Sometimes the car business is actually a job. It just is. Customers come in, they get excited about buying a new car, but the sales professional went to work that day. Not everything about work is like a vacation. I mean, if you're going on a vacation on an island, you should have a good time. You spent the money, you should have a good time, you should be treated well. But it's a job. And some things about our job we just don't like to do. Some people don't like to do paperwork. Some people don't like to finish up. There's parts of the job they love, and then there's parts of the job they hate. My advice to everybody is, if there's something in the job that you don't really prefer, knock that thing out first thing in the morning. Go to the dealership and learn something about the product that you have on the ground right now, or the product that's coming, or maybe the product that's 4 or 5 years old that you really didn't study on, because those cars now are in big demand. Go to the next level. Like I said multiple times, nobody really tries to be average. You know, if you go to a place of employment and you give some good effort, if you show up because it's your job and you show up to make a paycheck, you can make a paycheck. But virtually every single career choice can be amplified by hard work and education. I mean, you could go to work at an assembly plant for a car company and put seats in cars for the next 30 years. And you'll get raises during the time, they'll give, because you've been on the job, they'll give you raises. Or you could go and put that first seat in there and look up in that glass office in the top of the building and realize the overall manager of the facility is making more money, controlling more things, and having more opportunities, and you can set your goals to go to that next job. It's all about putting things into perspective. I believe in my heart that if a customer's buying something they've never had before, if they're buying a hybrid vehicle, they have really no idea how that vehicle works. I mean, right now with Toyota, it's kind of interesting. You can buy a hybrid, or you can buy an iForce Max hybrid, and those are completely different vehicles. One is set up to maximize fuel economy and performance in the car to make it a great car with great fuel economy, and the other is using hybrid technology to magnify the workability of the vehicle and the torque of the vehicle. So there is a giant difference. I'll close with this. When the new Tundra came out, twin turbo V6, we made fun of Ford years ago because they put out a twin turbo V6. Nobody's going to buy that. Now our next generation 4Runner is going to be a twin turbo 4-cylinder. And so, I sold 4Runners that had 116 horsepower. I mean, through the 90s, you had a V8 options that had 150 horsepower with a V8, 116 horsepower with a four-cylinder. And people bought them. We didn't keep them in stock. They were the fastest moving things out there. But that was what was available in the new vehicle side. So understand the difference in the product so that you can make sure the customer understands the way your manufacturer is going and what products they're producing for the customer and actually how they work. You know, these new vehicles that they're producing right now, there's a method. The government's driving a better gas mileage. So the manufacturers are having to make some concessions in order to make smaller engines that produce a bigger output that burn less fuel. I get it. If you're an electric car, the lighter you can make the electric car, the longer the battery life will move you down the road. And so there'll be multiple changes over the next couple of years. And the place they need to learn that is from the people that represent the product. Take your test, take your e-modules, study online. Believe it or not, even products that haven't come to your dealership yet, that aren't released to the public yet, the influencers have already put videos online. Go online and study. Take the first few minutes to an hour of every single day and get better with your product. PK52, the Saturday Morning Meeting.